babies communicate with their parents right from the word go, with facial expressions and vocalizations that parents respond to soon after birth. Quickly, over the first 9 months of life, they start to communicate in a more complex way. So they stop communicating just towards their parents and start to be able to communicate with their parents about the external world. So they can point to things and they can start to babble and express what they're interested in. And so really, before they have their first words, the two main ways in which babies can communicate is through vocalization. So around 6 months they start to be able to produce speech sounds like ba ba ba, da da da, and gradually they'll get more control over that, being able to use vocalization to intentionally tell people about what they want and comment on the things around them. And the same thing happens in gesture. So around 9 months, babies start to be able to produce gestures, for example, showing something, or around 11 months they start to point at things, which is particularly helpful for parents as a communicative strategy, because it becomes really clear what they want you to pay attention to. So babies who babble very early on, so they have lots of consonants in their babble, they say things like ba ba ba, da da da, they're able to make lots of different noises, tend to be able to produce words very early on, which is only natural because you need those speech sounds to make words. Also, children who point a lot early on seem to have a vocabulary that grows quite quickly too. And we think the reason for that is that when babies point at things, their parents naturally talk to them about what they're pointing at, and that's a perfect word learning opportunity. So on the one hand, you need to be able to make the speech sounds for words, and on the other hand, you need to know what words are used for. And it seems like both babbling and gesturing really set the stage for these later language developments. However, they're not necessarily precursors. So some babies don't do a lot of pointing, and yet they produce their first words quite early. So it doesn't have to happen, it just tends to be that if you do these things early, you'll be an early speaker. Parents tend to very naturally, without thinking about it, respond to their children's communication. So right from the word go, parents pick up on their child's facial expression and respond to it in temporal synchrony. They are tuned into their emotions. Parents speak in a very elaborate way that we call motherese, which is this way of talking that can be quite melodic. So, oh yeah, look at you, that's lovely. You know, this kind of way of speaking can be very helpful for babies. They find it engaging. They know that the speech is directed to them. It can help them segment the speech stream into different words. And so this comes very naturally for most parents. And so it really isn't a question of worrying how you should talk to your baby, because most people will find that this all comes very naturally, and that they will adjust the way that they speak to their child's specific point in development. So when a baby can start to understand words, they start to produce the words that they think their baby might be able to learn. So parents seem to be quite sensitive to where their child is at developmentally, and they adjust what they say to their baby's level of development. So most of this comes naturally, and it's not something we need to worry about or think about too much. But if you did want to try and promote your child's language learning, particularly in that window just before their first birthday, when they're starting to be ready to learn words, then a really nice strategy is to try and sit back a little bit, look at what your baby is interested in, and then talk to them about the things that they're already paying attention to. And that seems to be something that really facilitates language learning.